Hello and welcome. Welcome to Deprogrammed. I am your host, Keri Smith. And today we're going to be talking about censorship on the left. We're going to be talking about the boldness and the openness with which a lot of Democrats are now saying that we have to rethink the Constitution, rethink the First Amendment, and outright talking about how they're going to lose control if we don't censor. And this is a special episode for people on the left who might be curious about where I stand on things, people that I know in real life or through social media who follow me, and sometimes you guys can be a bit passive aggressive sometimes. But you keep following me, so maybe you're curious. There's a part of you that's interested, that's still open-minded, perhaps. And so I'm thinking of you guys. That's who I think of, and I try to focus on you guys before I start each show. Now sometimes I get distracted and I talk to the people who already agree with me, which is fine also, because I have things to say to people who are like-minded as well. And but this is really for people on the left. Today I want to just ask you to think about, if you consider yourself a liberal, what does that mean? Where did how, what does liberalism mean? Where did it evolve from? What are some of the basic tenets of your belief system? And then ask yourself, is the left, today's modern left, truly liberal? That's the question for today. And we're specifically drilling down and looking at one issue, and how the left, the modern left, views freedom of speech. That's what we're doing. So welcome. If you're new here, I hope you stick around. I see some familiar faces in the chat. Hello, guys. Good to see you. I hope you're having a good Monday. I have a couple of announcements. So book club, I just sent out the invitation to everyone who's requested it so far. Sorry, I was a little late getting it to you, but everyone should have it now. So if you have emailed me and you don't have the invitation yet, then email me again, because you should have it now. So we're reading Hillbilly Elegy. This is the book by J.D. Vance. It's topical. He is currently the vice presidential candidate on the Republican ticket, and this is a book that was turned into a film back before leftists decided they don't like him anymore. Hollywood did make a movie about it. So we're reading the book. It's not a very long read. You still have time to read it. Book club's a little bit over a week away. We're doing this on Tuesday, October 15th at 6:00 Central Time. We're going to be discussing it, and it's a video discussion, but you can turn your camera off if you're shy. It's not public. At some point we might make these public if everyone's cool with it, but I think it's served us well to have them private for now, so people feel very open about being on camera and sharing their opinions and ideas. So email me at deprogrammedpod@gmail.com if you would like to join us to talk about this book. And that's going to be in a week, Tuesday, October 15th at 6:00 Central. That's when that's happening. And I'm very excited. We have a lot of signups so far, so it should be a good group of people, which would be fun. Thank you to Super Base, the membership fairies, getting in here early and gifting 10 memberships. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. You're always supporting Deprogrammed, and I'm just very grateful. And for anyone who grabbed one of those memberships, Super Base is the person to thank for that membership. If you do want to support the channel, you can do so here at YouTube. You can become a member. You can do so at Rumble with Rumble Rants, or YouTube Super Chats. You can do so on Subscribestar, Locals, or Patreon. Those are the places. So appreciate all of the supporters who help me make these and help me spend time on this outside of gig jobs and renovating the house, which, by the way, you guys have told me previously you can't hear the music when there's people working outside. So hopefully that holds true today, because I can hear the music. It's just a little distracting, but it's okay. For anyone who cares, only a small number of you probably care, but our house is the painting is well underway. It should be done. I thought it was going to be done at the end of last week. It's not. It's a bigger job than anticipated, but it should be done by the end of this week, and I'm thrilled about that. I wanted to tell you, for those of you who were here when I told the story about the woman who showed up at my house unexpectedly and brought an antique box with photos and letters and things from the original owners. And she had photos of what the house used to look like in there. And she gave us the box. And she came back and gave us an antique rocking chair that belonged to the original owners. And it's a sewing, she called it a sewing chair. It's a short, squat little rocking chair for, she was like, oh, you would sit in it and do your sewing or your knitting. And it's beautiful. It's at least 100 years old and it's belongs in the house. I'm really happy we have a piece of furniture that was from the original owners. I don't know. It just makes me feel really happy to have that and just very touched. It was super cool movement. Good evening, Real Raven. Good evening. I believe, if I remember who you are correctly, and I think I do, you're in Germany. That's another announcement just quickly. My husband's band is going to be touring Europe again. In a couple weeks, we're going to be, and I'm going with them again. Yay. I'm like, tag along. I'll be your merch girl. Let me see Europe. So they're going to be playing in several places in Germany and Switzerland. And I've posted about it on socials. I'll put it here in the YouTube community tab too. If you were in any of the cities that we're visiting, I hope you come out and say hello. I love Germany. I can't wait to visit there again. Okay. What else? Oh, he says German expat in Ireland, but close. I do have my recording studio here. Oh, in Ireland. And Ireland's a place I haven't been to yet. Would love to. Would love to go sometime. Okay. I'm also excited because it's October. Got my Halloween shirt on. One of my favorite months, and for selfish reasons because it's my birthday. It's my birthday on Thursday, and I'm very excited. And also my husband's birthday coming up at the end of the month. And my sobriety birthday at the end of the month. There's a lot of things to celebrate this month. So, and I love the fall. So I'm in a pretty good mood. I hope you are too. I hope you're having a good beginning of the fall season. Okay, so we're gonna be talking about free speech. Let's get out of my birthday excitement. We're gonna be talking about free speech. Okay, so I've got a couple of video clips to show you, and if you were on the left, thank you for taking the time to be here. So this first clip is actually compiled by the journalist Michael Schellenberger, who's an independent journalist now and a really great one, and very liberal leaning still in a lot of ways. I think I don't follow him too closely, but I think for people on the left, you probably know who he is. So here's a video that he put together about some of the open calls for censorship that we're seeing now on the left. So let's start with this one.
Gates strongly implies that AI should be programmed to immediately mass censor disfavored views of vaccines.
If you're causing people not to take vaccines, where are those boundaries that even the U.S. Should, have rules? And then if you have...
Let's pause here for 1 second. Listen to what he said. If you're on the left, listen to this. Bill Gates is saying if you're, quote, causing people not to take vaccines. First of all, how are you causing it if you're sharing information with them? They still are making up their own mind. So what he's against is people being able to choose for themselves. He's not pro-choice. He's not pro-choice. He's not for bodily autonomy. He wants everyone to do as they're told, to do what the government and big pharma tells them. You're forcing them, you're causing them to choose not to take a vaccine. That's authoritarian. That's not liberalism. And so he's proposing that as all these people are working on and building algorithms for AI, that they automatically build in that that AI should censor anything that goes against what the government or Bill Gates or Big Pharma wants, what corporations want. This should really alarm you if you're on the left. If you're an old school, if you think of yourself as an old school liberal, and I know some friends who are legitimately boomers. I know everyone gets called a boomer these days, but legitimately from the boomer generation who I would say are a little bit stuck in the past, and they think that we're still living in the 60s, and they don't understand what's evolved with the left in past several decades. And so for those people, I'd say, think back to when did you first become a liberal? Why are you a liberal? Think back to the time that you appear to be stuck in, sometimes like the 60s. What would you say about some billionaire like Bill Gates saying that we need to make sure that we're censoring information and that we pre-program that censorship into the algorithms so that you can't get information that's critical of, I don't know, big pharma, factory farming, seed oils? Who knows what he wants to program it with? He thinks he is one of our betters and that he should be allowed to decide that there's a class of betters, these elite betters, and they should be like the pigs in George Orwell's 1984, that they should get to set the rules for everyone else, that they don't even follow, but they determine because they're smarter, they're better, they're more moral. They should decide what information you get and what information is bad for you. I don't trust this man. Do you? Really? Leftists, liberals, old school liberals. Well, let me just back it up a little bit and let's hear this whole part. If you're causing people not to take vaccines, he says,
causing people not to take vaccines, where are those boundaries that even the US should, have rules? And then if you have rules, what is it? Is there some AI that encodes those rules?
One idea that AOC promoted was media literacy.
Several members of Congress in some of my discussions have brought up media literacy.
That's an Orwellian code word for government propaganda, often aimed at children in schools. So all of this is happening against a backdrop of the possibility that voters will elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as president and vice president of the United States. Those two have repeatedly called for government censorship of social media platforms, including banning their political rivals, Donald Trump, just as Brazil's dictator judge has done with his demand that certain politicians be banned across social media platforms.
There's a lot here. Let me back up just a second to his comments about AOC. AOC saying we need media literacy, and Schellenberger correctly says that's an Orwellian term that they use to talk about programming children. And that's exactly what they do. When they say media literacy, and especially when they use that phrase in regards to teaching kids about media literacy, which they're doing very frequently now. You will hear that phrase. If you haven't heard it before, you're going to start hearing a lot more. They say we need to be teaching children. They mean programming children. Media literacy. Media literacy means telling children what to think about information, telling them what media is good, what outlets are good, and what outlets are bad, what opinions are good, what opinions are bad. Teaching children to disregard facts, like the fact that Joe Biden was obviously cognitively impaired. But what was the propaganda that the left was pushing until they decided to throw him under the bus and expose him and do a coup and put Kamala on the ticket without an election? Until they decided to do that, what was the propaganda they were pushing? They were saying, don't believe your lying eyes. I mean, you need media literacy. You need to be able to have someone interpret this for you and tell you you're not seeing what you think you're seeing. You're not seeing a person in cognitive decline. He's totally fine. This is what they mean by media literacy. Propaganda. Telling you what to think. Lying to you. Programming you. That's what AOC means. Okay, so he's also talking here about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Let's back up just a little because there was those two parts got conflated.
Who have repeatedly called for government censorship of social media platforms, including banning their political rivals, Donald Trump, just as Brazil's dictator judge has done with his demand that certain politicians be banned across social media platforms. What the last few months make clear is that many governments, journalists, and other societal elites don't view their ability to censor or regulate social media platforms as a nice-to-have goal. Rather, they view it as a must-have one. They can't stand that X is allowing so much speech. They want even more censorship over Meta, Facebook, whose CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, recently confessed to bowing down to unethical and illegal government censorship demands on COVID. Bill Gates already has too much power over organizations like the World Health Organization, as his foundation is the largest private donor. According to Politico, Gates and his partners use their clout to control the global COVID response with little oversight. TikTok banned ads by a new athletic company, XXXY Athletics, started by the former COO of Levi's, Jennifer Say, because her company recognizes the reality of biological sex. The platforms allow the promotion of the trans agenda. TikTok allows ads for minors to perform irreversible surgeries. As such, it is censoring the truth and demanding that the public instead believe the lie that physically different trans-identified boys and men can and should participate fairly and equally in girls' and women's sports.
Okay, couple things there. One is that right up top, I agree with, I saw this in the chat, it scrolled by, so I don't know who said it. It might have been John or someone at the beginning. But there's a difference between ideological censorship or censorship of information, censorship of the news, of facts, of even bad opinions and opinions you don't like. There's a difference between that and also censorship of your political opponents, which they keep arguing on. Like, come on, liberals. They're communists. They're fascists. They want to censor and jail and their political opponents. They don't even want there to be elections. But putting all that aside, there's a difference between all of that, the censorship, and then age appropriate regulation of platforms and of what children see. And I agree with John or whoever, if I'm getting it wrong, the person at the beginning of the chat who was saying this, I do agree that when platforms choose to censor sexually explicit material, I do agree with that. If they know they have children using their site, it should be blocked, or you should have to do an age verification. I know people can lie on the age verifications, but at least have the attempt to weed out children from viewing that. We don't treat children are not the same as adults. We as a society have always agreed on that until very recently. Suddenly, we protect children from things that we don't protect adults from choices that we don't protect adults from. We don't allow in our law reflects our belief that children, and it's not just a belief, it's a fact, children are developmentally different from adults. They're not fully developed. We don't allow them to choose to drink or buy and drive a car or smoke cigarettes or buy a gun. We don't allow children to fight in the military. We don't allow children to get a tattoo. We don't allow children to choose, right? When we put that in air quotes, choose to have sex with adults. We don't allow this. But suddenly we've started, as a society, collectively thinking differently about children. And that's in large part due to the left. pushing this idea suddenly that children are not able to consent to all of these things. They can't consent to tattoos or drinking or smoking or buying a gun or driving a car or having sex. They can't consent to that, but they can magically somehow consent to surgically mutilating themselves, removing their body parts, mangling their genitals, taking so-called puberty blockers that in many cases sterilize them for life. Somehow we've decided that kids can do that, and that's purposeful. That's part of queer theory, which is under the umbrella of woke ideology. Queer theory, which has roots in Marxism, like all of woke ideology. Queer theory, which says that children are an oppressed class and that we need to stop oppressing them and get rid of the age of consent for everything. That's the ultimate end goal of queer theory in regards to kids. And so there's been this, I think, because so many adults have just put blinders on and they've been manipulated by weaponized empathy, by the left lying to them and saying, hey, if you care about kids, then you're going to allow them to choose to mutilate their own bodies and to sterilize themselves. That's a lie. That's a lie. But a lot of adults have been manipulated that way because they care so much what other people think of them, and they're not using critical thinking. And so many adults have, on that one issue, not on anything else about kids yet, but on that one issue about so-called trans surgeries and, medical transition for kids, so many adults have become hypocrites who say suddenly, yes, kids can consent to that. And it's seeped into other things. Because once you start to think that way, that's the whole goal. They want to get those adults eventually to a place where they say, yeah, kids can consent to anything. Let's not treat them under law any differently than adults. That's where they want to get them eventually, and they will get a lot of them there. And so some of these adults have started thinking, there's no reason to try and protect children from sexually explicit material, whether that's in school, libraries. That's crazy. We don't have Penthouse. We've never had Penthouse in school libraries. That's not banning Penthouse. That's removing sexually inappropriate material, inappropriate for the age group that it's being put in front of. And so many adults have started to think there's nothing wrong with that. Like, oh, sure, put the sexually inappropriate material in there. And they don't have a problem with it on social media platforms either, which is crazy to me. A lot of people got up in arms recently when Pornhub, which is one of the biggest porn delivery systems online, made a big stink about how, because of a new Texas law that requires that they do age verification for the people who are accessing that website, accessing porn, that they're no longer going to allow their site to be shown to people in Texas. If your IP address reads Texas, you can't access the site. And they played victim and stuff in the press. And I saw leftists that were saying, they were arguing on behalf of not having to age verify kids who want to access porn. It's incredible. That's incredible. So just wanted to carve that out, that is something that I do think is appropriate. And I do think that websites should be, that social media platforms should be moderating content when it comes to what is appropriate for children versus adults. But when it comes to censorship meaning ideological censorship, deplatforming doctors and scientists like they did during the COVID years, like Twitter did, like Facebook did, shutting down their accounts, shadow banning scientists, shadow banning doctors, removing their posts, removing studies that they shared. That's evil. And we know because of the Twitter files and the Facebook files, which a lot of leftists haven't read, and I would encourage you to read them. If you think of yourself as a liberal, you should read them. You should know what they were doing behind the scenes. Because of the Twitter files and the Facebook files, we know that they were doing this at the behest of Biden's administration, at the behest of the federal government. These large corporations were ideologically censoring. They were behaving like communists, like fascists. Zuckerberg, as Schellenberger mentioned, recently, finally admitted that this happened and said he was sorry that he let it happen. Pretty incredible for him to do that. Here's just one article about it. If you're in the leftist bubble, you may not have even heard this. I know that. Isn't that crazy? For those of us who are not in that bubble anymore, or were never in it, it's kind of astounding sometimes what information they don't get, right? What information they don't get being in that world. But here we go. If you're on the left and didn't know this, I've talked about it before, but let's bring it up because it's relevant. Politico article headline: Zuckerberg says he regrets caving into White House pressure on content. Do you remember when the Twitter files and the Facebook files came out? These independent journalists who put together these reports and showed all the internal communications where the Biden administration and three-letter agencies were having meetings, continuous meetings with Twitter executives and Facebook executives and telling them what to censor, telling them to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story, for example, to take down news. That's a violation of the First Amendment. That's the federal government doing that, using a corporation to do it. But that's the federal government doing it. Zuckerberg says he regrets caving in. So when these broke, though, my point was when the Facebook files and the Twitter files broke, I remember a lot of the leftist talking heads, the ones who program and tell the left what to think, they were all saying to their cult, like, don't bother reading the files, don't go and see for yourself what's in them, don't look at the internal communications, don't go and look at the Twitter files. This is all a conspiracy theory. They just throw that word out now and they know that it works like magic. Like, that doesn't have to have any basis in truth. They can just say that about anything. Gravity is a conspiracy theory, and the left is like eating it up like gravity's not real. Like, whatever they say is a conspiracy theory. It's like Pavlov's dog now. So they're like, don't go read it. Don't go read it. And then look, Zuckerberg finally admitted it's true. Zuckerberg says he regrets caving to White House pressure on content. Meta CEO tells the House Judiciary Committee that he wishes he had been more outspoken against the Biden administration efforts during the pandemic. If you're in the leftist bubble, again, a lot of you, because I've talked to some of you in real life who weren't aware of all the censorship that was happening. You were insulated from it. You were in that bubble. You had no idea. For those of us who had already escaped that bubble or were never in it, it was an everyday thing. Tiger? Hold on one second. My little dog has something to say. Okay, I'm going to grab him. He's going to sit with me. The painter, I think, is in the house, and he's like, no, someone's here. Hold on. Thanks for being patient with me. He's my little doorbell. He tells me when anybody comes in the house. That's what he's saying, John. He's saying somebody's here. I also have 2 other dogs here, so you might hear a bit of barking in the distance now. I'm taking away the dog's free speech. So what I was saying for those of you on the left is that a lot of you, I mean, I talked to a friend who is part of the left, but thinks of herself as a liberal. And this was before she started understanding a lot of what I was saying. Back when she first started asking me, like, was genuinely curious about, what I'm on about, I guess. And she didn't know about all the censorship that was happening during COVID on these platforms. I was telling her, look, Facebook took down uh I mean, so many of my posts like they did you, and we all had to learn a secret underground language to be able to talk about things without being censored. Like, we had to learn and come up with new words for things because they had automatically it would trigger censorship if you said certain things. They were censoring on YouTube. They took down one of my videos on my old channel and gave us a 30-day strike because I interviewed people, many of whom worked in the healthcare industry. I interviewed them about the pressure they were getting from their employers to get the jab. See, there's one of the words, to get the COVID vaccine. And that's not allowed. You're not allowed to talk about that. Why? Liberals, let me ask you, why? Why shouldn't they be allowed to talk about that, their experiences with that, the choices they were being forced to make? So this was happening. Facebook, one of the examples I was going to give is Facebook took down, like, probably the most egregious one that happened to me. They took down a study that I shared. I offered no commentary. I just shared the study. They removed it and referred me to the new terms of service, the new TOS, which they were constantly updating during COVID, if you remember. And the new terms of service, I read it, and they had updated it to say that they would be removing anything that might cause vaccine hesitancy, even if it was factually true or a scientific study. They would be taking that down if they judged that it might cause people to hesitate to take this new shot that was being pushed on us. That's not liberal. Liberals, that's not liberal. And when I told my friend this, she was shocked. She didn't know. She was like, that was happening? Yes, this was happening all the time. And it wasn't just random people like me on Facebook. They were censoring scientists from Yale. They were censoring doctors, removing their accounts in some cases. And the left, a lot of people in that bubble had no idea that this was even going on. So here it is. Here's the head of Facebook saying, yes, this happened, and I regret it now. Mark Zuckerberg says he regrets that Meta bowed to Biden administration pressure to censor content. He's telling you right there, it came from the federal government. It's a First Amendment violation. He bowed to Biden administration pressure to censor content, saying in a letter that the interference was, quote, wrong, and he plans to push back if it happens again. Well, I will believe it when I see it. I have noticed it appears that they are less strict on Facebook than they used to be, based on some of the stuff I've been able to post recently, but they haven't loosened the reins all that much. There's still other things I'm getting warnings for. But he says he's going to push back if it happens again. Meta CEO aired his grievances in a letter Monday to the House Judiciary Committee in response to its investigation into content moderation on online platforms. Zuckerberg detailed how senior administration officials leaned on the company to censor certain posts about COVID-19, including humor. That was the other thing. They were taking down any funny memes or you couldn't even joke about the COVID policies. Like, you couldn't even make fun of the nonsensical arguments they were making. You couldn't have a laugh about it. They were removing jokes and memes. So including humor and satire. And he said that senior administration officials, quote, expressed a lot of frustration if the social media platform resisted. Quote, I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. Dude, you were not outspoken about it at all. I mean, I guess you're leading us to believe that you tried to be behind the scenes, but front facing, you were not outspoken about it at all. You were happy little censors. You were happy little puppets of the government. Zuckerberg wrote, he continues, quote, I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction, and we're ready to push back if something like this happens again. Are you? They were also deleting entire groups. There were all these groups that people had set up. Do you guys remember this? With thousands and thousands of people who were talking about and sharing their experiences with vaccine injury. And they said, sorry, you can't talk about that. You can't have any discussions about that with anyone else. They removed those groups, just deleted them. Zuckerberg also expressed regret for Meta's downplaying of content related to coverage by the New York Post about Hunter Biden. See? They were told by the Biden administration to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story. And he says right here, ahead of the 2020 election, because they thought it would influence the election. So they said, let's censor it. The government said this, and big social, the corporations complied. This is not liberal. Liberals, this is not liberal. You understand this, right? It doesn't make you all the things that you think are bad. It doesn't make you a right winger or a Republican or a bigot or all the stereotypes that you've been fed about people who are not in the left. It doesn't make you any of those things to be an honest liberal with integrity and to look at this and say, this is wrong, like Zuckerberg's now saying. This is not liberal. And unfortunately, if you're at the very beginning part of considering new information and figuring out what you really think about things, I was there, and it's a long process. And when I was at the beginning of that process, like you might be tempted to do, I was thinking, well, this is wrong, but this is a bug. This is not a feature. This is an aberration. This is not what the left is about. This is an aberration. And if I speak to people on the left and other fellow liberals, I can help them see that we're wrong on this. No, you can try that. You're going to find out that it is a feature. It is a feature of the modern left, censorship. It's not a bug. It's not an aberration. This is what they believe in. They are authoritarians. They are not liberals. They are not individualists. They are collectivists. This is the modern left. They still pull out this word liberal and drape themselves in it because it has such a long history in our country. And people like you maybe on the left, and like I did, have a lot of attachment to that word and to their identification as a liberal and thinking, it's tied to their sense of identity. And so they pull that word out and they misuse it. And they use that word liberal and drape it over illiberalism, over the exact opposite. They drape it. They try and cloak their censorship with the word liberal. They try and cloak authoritarianism with the word liberal. And if you're a liberal, don't let them do this. Why do you let them do this? So Zuckerberg's talking about how the Biden administration pressured Facebook to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story ahead of the 2020 election. And that the FBI warned it may have been rooted in a Russian disinformation operation. BS. Look it up, liberals, look into it. You've probably never read the Hunter Biden laptop story. You were told what to think about it, and you disregarded it. Go read it. While you're at it, read Ashley Biden's diary about her dad. Something else you should read. Okay, this is Zuckerberg continuing, quote, "It's since been made clear that the reporting, the Hunter Biden laptop reporting, was not Russian disinformation." Yes, we know that. "And in retrospect, we should not have demoted the story," he wrote. Republicans on the committee, led by Ohio Representative Jim Jordan, celebrated the letter in a long series of posts on X, calling it, quote, "a big win for free speech." The White House issued a statement defending the administration's approach to COVID-19 information. They defended their censorship. They defended violating the First Amendment. They defended their authoritarianism. Biden's administration did. Of course they did. Here's their quote, quote, "When confronted with a deadly pandemic, this administration encouraged responsible actions." Bullshit. It's not responsible to censor information so that the public can't make a fully informed decision. That's not responsible. That's tyranny. It's irresponsible. There are many people I know. I didn't take the jab and I have never regretted it, but there are many people I know who took it and regret it. Some of you may be in the chat. And I feel for those people because some of them were not operating with all of the information when they made their decision because the government purposefully censored the facts, censored. They weren't transparent. They didn't allow for transparency. They didn't allow for a diversity of voices. They censored scientists who did not agree with what the government wanted, with what the government was saying, with what big pharma and corporations and Bill Gates were saying. So no, it's not responsible. They said we encourage responsible actions to protect public health and safety. Anytime a government uses the phrase public health, be very wary, be very circumspect. Public health. They always use public health to push tyranny, to protect public health and safety. The statement said, "Our position has been clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects that their actions have on the American people." Yeah, the effect that their actions have on the American people. YouTube censored this video, removed it, and put my channel under warning. They required me to cut this part in order to re-upload it for speaking facts that they don't allow. For the uncensored video, please visit rumble.com/c/real Keri Smith. Because you're not liberals, because you don't believe in bodily autonomy, because you're not pro-choice, you're just pro-abortion. Look at this. While making independent choices about the information they present, kind of hard for some of these big social companies to make independent choices when they're meeting with all the three-letter agencies who are telling them what to do. The letter is the latest installment in a multi-year Washington argument about the role of social media companies in suppressing content friendly to conservatives. Let's be real here, though. It's not just that they're suppressing content friendly to conservatives, which they are, but they're suppressing content that is valuable for the American people, all of the American people, liberals and conservatives. That COVID information had nothing to do with conservatives or liberals. They made it about that. They tried to force it into this false dichotomy they've set up. That was information that all Americans should have had. They suppress information that was friendly for all Americans. Once Elon Musk bought Twitter, and you know what? Let me say this. A lot of the people I know who were getting censored were actual liberals. It was very few of them, but I knew some and progressives who stuck to their values and were very highly skeptical and we're criticizing Big Pharma. Imagine that, liberals. Imagine criticizing Big Pharma. Remember when you used to do that? When we used to do that? So they were censoring those people too. Once Elon Musk bought Twitter, now X, in late 2022, turning the platform into a haven for, they put free speech in quotes, free speech, because they don't believe in free speech. That's why they put something in quotes if they don't believe in it. Like when I say, this man claims he's a woman. They were like, it's a platform for free speech, whatever that is. Oh, it's only just the First Amendment. Media. Liberals. So it says, once Elon Musk bought Twitter, now X, in late 2022, turning the platform into a haven for free speech and reinstating numerous banned conservative posters and liberal posters, Zuckerberg became a particular target of Jordan. Like many on the right, Jordan argued that the Biden administration unduly pressured social media platforms to take down content on topics from COVID-19 to Hunter Biden's laptop. Yeah, that's a fact. It's not just an argument. It's a fact. It happened. We've seen the evidence. We've seen the proof. We've seen the Twitter files. We've seen the Facebook files. Everyone who's serious and based in reality, including Mark Zuckerberg, apparently, is admitting that this happened. Denying it is like denying gravity. Jordan demanded extensive internal communications records from Meta and threatened a contempt of Congress hearing for the tech mogul before de-escalating at the last minute, saying that Meta had provided the documents he requested. Zuckerberg also said he would not repeat contributions he made in the last presidential election cycle to fund election infrastructure. Saying that although they were intended to be nonpartisan, some people still interpreted the effort as benefiting one party or the other. You bet we did. Quote, my goal is to be neutral, not play a role one way or the other, or to even appear to be playing a role, he said. So I don't plan on making a similar contribution this cycle. You have a lot. I'm not saying it can't be done, Zuckerberg, but you have a lot to do to prove that you're neutral, that you want to be neutral, given all of the evil that you've done on behalf of the government, all of the censorship that you've done, and the propaganda you've pushed on behalf of the government. Okay. Yeah. Surly unicorn. Free speech for everyone as long as we agree with what is being said. That's exactly how they treat it, right? They don't believe in the left doesn't believe in free speech anymore. They're enemies of free speech. Yes, real Raven, just like freedom. They like to put freedom in quotes too. They don't believe in freedom. They don't believe in liberty. They don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in the First or the Second Amendment. I'm about to show you a couple more clips. So Michael Schellenberger, when he shared that short little compilation, what he said about it was this. He said, Gates, Soros, Biden, Harris, Waltz, Clinton, Obama, the legacy media, the FBI, the CIA, the DHS, the EU, Brazil, and the Five Eyes nations are desperate to censor the internet. They're not hiding it. Look at them. They're trying to normalize it. They're trying to make it seem normal. This is an exceedingly dangerous moment. And he's right. So now we're going to watch John Kerry openly. I can't believe I voted for this man. Openly saying that we need to reconsider the Constitution and the First Amendment. And I mean, did you ever, if you were in the bubble like me, if you were in the leftist cult like me, did you ever think you would see this? Like, if you could go back to what you believed when you were in that cult, and if you sincerely believed, like I did, that it was liberal, that the left was liberal, I never thought I would ever see something like this. This is a Democrat who once ran for president, very prominent politician on the left, supposed liberal, right? Supposed fake liberal, calling for us to rethink and amend the Constitution to get rid of the First Amendment. I'm not going to put the words in his mouth. Here, listen to what he said. Let me make this a little bit larger. Here we go.
And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact are kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go and people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera.
Wow.
But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways. And
so
that's
you're
really
questioning
dangerous.
really if democracy can survive unregulated social media.
I think democracies are very challenged right now and have not proven they can move fast enough or big enough to deal with the challenges that we are facing. And to me, that is part of what this race, this election is all about. Will we break the fever in the United States?
Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable to hear someone who pretends to be a liberal say, first of all, look, I know in the chat somebody's like, we're not a democracy. I know we're a democratic republic, and that is an important point. And a lot of leftists don't know that, and but that's a subject for another time. They think of us, they've been told repeatedly, the propaganda is told them over and over, we're a democracy, we have to protect democracy. Trump's a threat to democracy is going to end. Okay, so what's funny here is, given all of that, he is saying that a democracy sucks because we can't censor and control and force people to hold the opinions we want them to hold, the one approved opinion. That's what he's saying. He's saying, remember, these are the same people, liberals, who keep telling you, leftists, who keep telling you, democracy is under threat by the right, it's under threat. Here's the same people now saying democracies are bad because it's too bad we can't just censor what we want, right? And tell you what you have to think and what you have to do. They are authoritarians. They are dictators at heart. This is not a bug. This is a feature of the left, of the modern left. Now, it's arguable whether this has always been what the left was like in the US or if it's become this way. For those of you who say, no, Kerry, it's always been this way and you've had your blinders on when you were in it, okay. I don't know enough to say yes or no. I'm going to take you at your word that it's always been this way. But for people who are in that bubble, when they're waking up, they have a very real sense that it wasn't. If they start to see things like this, they don't remember. We don't remember seeing Democrats say stuff like this before. We don't remember them openly saying democracy's bad, the First Amendment is bad, because we can't tell you what outlets are sick and which ones are cool. I mean, they do tell us that, but they can't shut off because of free speech. They can't do what they want to do, which is to make no mistake. He's saying we have to win this election, this one that's about to happen, so that we can disregard the First Amendment and do what we want to do. They want to make us look like what some of Europe looks like right now, where the police can show up at your door if you tweet an opinion they don't agree with. If you say trans women are not women, you can get a visit from the police in the UK. I'm not joking. That happens. They want to take us to that place. It's not hyperbole to look far down the road at where that leads and to understand that history has the potential to rhyme. You know that expression about history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes? History has the potential to rhyme here, where they want to make it illegal to share facts they don't like, information they don't like, opinions they don't like. They want to destroy the Constitution. The left wants to. Democrats want to destroy the Constitution. They want to destroy the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. They are not liberals. Now, you can argue if they were ever liberals, but let's talk about right now. They are not liberals. They're not liberals. I have to put this back up one more time because I want to go through it slowly. Jean, I think I saw something. Somebody said put up where the clip is. I will put up where the clip is on Twitter, on X for sure. I'll repost this so it's at the top. And I'll drop the links in the description. And if there's any mods here today, please bug me and make sure I do put it in the description in case I forget. I don't think I'll forget, but just in case. I want to put this link so you can see this. It's insane. Randy, hey, Randy, thanks for supporting Deprogrammed. Randy Wallen for $5 says, liberalism, wokeism, doesn't matter what it's called. The left is totalitarian to its core. I agree. I absolutely agree. What I'm asking is for those who are in the left who consider themselves to be liberal to think about what liberal means, what it's supposed to mean, what values you used to think you believed in, and to ask yourself if those values are reflected in what you just saw in the Democratic Party today. Is it a liberal party? It's certainly not. Thank you, Randy. Cheeky Mare's here. Yeah, Cheeky Mare says, I will bug you. Thank you, lady. I appreciate it. Okay, we're going to just back up just a little bit. I'm sorry to belabor this, but look, leftists, there's a couple things I want to point out. Here we go.
And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building.
Look at him. Look at him, leftists. Look at him, liberals. He says, it's a problem with democracies that people can express their own opinions and ideas, and they can share information and facts that we don't like. That's what he's saying. He's saying democracies are bad. These are the same people who keep saying democracies are good, and we are one, and Trump's going to end it. This is what they really think. What's amazing is that he's so open about it.
In consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today.
We can't get consensus around any issue, he says. So, a couple things about this. They want to force consensus. They don't want to give you a choice. They want to tell you what to think. I mean, it's working. The propaganda, controlling the media is working pretty well for them so far. The government and the media being like this, like in a fascist dictatorship. The government telling the corporations what to censor. That's fascism. I mean, it's working pretty well for them, but apparently not well enough. They want even more control. He's like, we can't have he wants one allowed mind, one allowed opinion. You know, the thing about consensus is people are questioning what's true today because we have discovered, so many of us have woken up and discovered how much you bastards have lied to us, how much you bastards have censored, how much propaganda you fed us, how many things you pushed on us that were not true. And I'm talking about a loss of faith, deserved loss of faith in the government, in the media, in academia, and in our schools, in K through 12 education. There is a reason no one trusts you anymore. You don't allow open inquiry. You don't allow debate. That's how you arrive at consensus. Dumb, eh? I'm trying not to swear too much. That's how you arrive at consensus. When you have an open dialogue and you allow multiple opinions and a diversity of ideas in the marketplace of ideas, and the best ideas rise to the top and the truth rises to the top. It's like science. You know, these leftists during COVID who are anti-science, we're censoring science, we're censoring scientists and giving you their one approved opinion. They were always saying during those years, you know, they believe in science. They put it on their stupid signs in the yards. We believe in science. When I see that sign, I'm like, I know you don't. I know you don't. Science is not a faith. It doesn't require belief. As Brett Weinstein has said before, and I might mangle it, but it only requires transparency, which means being open, which means showing, you know, your transparency in methodology. What were your methods to arrive at the result you arrived at? You have to show that. And transparency in terms of open dialogue about the results. And for people to come forward if they have studies showing something that contradicts your results. It requires transparency and it requires reproducible results. Independent, reproducible results. That's what it requires. John Kerry, the left, the Democrats, their way of thinking is that they don't want to allow for that. They don't want to allow for transparency, open inquiry, reproducible results, people to arrive at the same at the best conclusion because we've allowed this marketplace of ideas and debate and we've arrived at the truth. No, they're actually afraid you might arrive at the truth. And so when he talks about consensus, he's not talking about a true consensus. He's talking about a top-down, authoritarian, government, tyrannical, forced opinion, the one approved opinion. And you can bet that's not going to be the truth because they're having to force it through the government, which means force, which means the threat of men with guns. That's what it leads to.
You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact, they're kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree.
And rightfully so, because you guys are liars. Because you're tyrants, you're abusive, you're oppressive. You're not liberals. I don't care what you call yourselves. You shall know them by their fruits. If you say you're a liberal, like words actually mean things. If you say you're a liberal, but you support censorship and authoritarianism and political violence and jailing your political enemies, and you're not a liberal. I could call myself a cat. It doesn't make me a cat. I could call myself a vegetarian, but I'm eating meat. Do you understand? Like I'm eating, words mean things. I'm not a vegetarian. Clearly, by my fruits, by my behavior, you can judge me and say, hey, Kerry, you told me you're a vegetarian, but I noticed you were eating a steak yesterday. Like, yeah, it's the same thing. Hey, John Kerry, I know you say you're a liberal, but you're supporting getting rid of the First Amendment and free speech, and you're supporting censorship and authoritarianism. So he's here bemoaning the fact that nobody trusts their mouthpiece, or a lot of us. There's still plenty of people in the cult who trust their mouthpieces, but a lot of us have woken up. We don't trust our mouthpieces anymore, and he thinks that's a problem.
Been eviscerated to a certain degree, and people go and that people self-select where they go for their news or for their information, and then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick, and have
one source, maybe could that one source be? Do you mean like going to the federal government? Do you mean like going to you commies, you fascists, going to you? Because it turns out even Mark Zuckerberg is admitting that during the COVID years, they were all working at your behest. The one source coming from you guys, Fauci, the government, telling big social and the corporations what one allowed opinion, what one kind of information was allowed.
As an agenda, and they're putting out disinformation. Our First Amendment stands as a
disinformation. Would that be disinformation like you guys lying and saying that there's no way COVID-19 came from the Wuhan lab? You guys lied about that. Would that be disinformation? What about the disinformation where you were lying and saying that ivermectin wasn't safe and convincing all these dolts that it was just a horse medicine and people were crazy for taking this drug that's been around for decades and has won Nobel Prizes for its use in humans? You were saying this was less safe than a new and experimental mRNA vaccine that didn't actually work, that didn't actually stop transmission or stop people from spreading it or catching it. Like, what exactly? They're psychopaths. They behave like psychopaths and sociopaths. And narcissists, they engage in DARVO, deny and reverse victim offender. They engage in projection. So they accuse their targets, their victims, of everything that they do. All they peddle in is in misinformation. So they accuse everyone else of misinformation. So it's that what they want is for the objective viewer who doesn't, the low information viewer, to look and just see the two Spider-Men pointing at each other meme where they can't figure out what you're both accusing the other one of misinformation. I can't tell.
Major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to hammer it out of existence. So our First Amendment stands as a major block.
Our First Amendment stands as a major block. This is what a supposed liberal is saying. This is what the Democrats are now openly saying. Our First Amendment is a major block to being able to what? Hammer your opinions, your facts out, to hammer them out of existence. The First Amendment is constraining us. This democracy we talk about all the time is constraining. The Constitution, the First Amendment, free speech is constraining our will to power and control. These are the words of a tyrant. This is not a liberal. I beg of you. Maybe you're on the left. You came here to laugh at me, to, I don't know, get off on like hate watching. I know some of you do that. I just beg of you. I beg of you to think about what I'm saying and to listen to this man's words. It's incredible. Is it not? I voted for him. I voted for this dude. And I'm telling you, this is insane. This is a tyrant. These are the words and beliefs of an authoritarian dictator. This is not a liberal. And unfortunately, this is your whole party now. This is the whole Democratic Party now. I've got another clip I want to show you. This is Hillary Clinton. Oh boy. This is Hillary Clinton. Now listen to what she's saying. Pretty similar stuff. They're all openly saying it now. All the Democrats openly saying these very illiberal, dangerous, anti-democratic, anti-constitutional things.
There should be a lot of things done. We should be, in my view, repealing something called Section 230, which gave, platforms on the internet immunity because they were thought to be just pass-throughs, that they shouldn't be judged for the content that is posted. But we now know that that was an overly simple view, that if the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. There should be a lot of things.
Did you hear that? So the reason they're ramping up on this right now is they are furious about Elon Musk providing one platform for free speech that supports the values of free speech. They are furious, and they're all just with the pitchforks out. They want nothing more than to put the saddle back on Twitter, back on X, like it was during Jack Dorsey era, like it was when they were censoring all the scientists, all the doctors, all the people who didn't agree with them. She said, if we can't censor, if the government can't censor, and she means the Democrats, we lose control. There it is at the end. She's showing you their cards right there. Control. Control. Liberals, she's talking about controlling you. Do you not hear it?
Or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. There should be a lot.
Pretty crazy. Total control. Yes, Real Raven. Yes. It's just it's just crazy. This is maybe a good video to send to your friends. If you have any, I know we talk about this a lot. If you have friends who are in the woke cult, maybe they don't realize it. There's a specific kind of person in the cult I'm talking about. It's the ones who are still reachable. And I still hear from people every day who are waking up every day, whether directly or online. I see stories about people waking up. Like, there's always a story of someone leaving the cult. You can still reach people. I'm not talking about the hateful, crazy ones. You should hopefully know the difference. If there is someone in your life who is still in the woke cult and they don't realize it, they might be offended by being characterized in that way because they're the ones who do think of themselves as liberals, and they're usually very sincere in their beliefs, although they're terribly blinded and brainwashed, like I was, to what they're actually supporting. It took a lot to get me to the place where I was like, wait a minute. I'm being asked to support political violence and censorship. It took a lot for me to see that and to go and to stop and say, this is not what we stand for, right? Like, I went through that whole stage first of leaving the cult where, like I said, you're trying to convince other people in the cult that, like, hey, we've taken a wrong turn somewhere. This isn't liberal. And they're like, shut up. This is what we are. And you're like, why? I'm making light of it, but it truly is like it's like discovering you're in a cult. Like, oh my gosh, how did I get in here? It's what it's like. If you left the cult, say something in the chat, because we could have. Sometimes I've thought about having a AA type meetings for those of us who left the woke cult, because we have, whenever I meet you guys, like that similar experience, almost like when you go to an AA meeting and you all share that experience of leaving that behind, and there's so much shorthand and things you understand. And so those who've left the cult, you know what I'm talking about. You know that moment when you were like, wait a minute, where am I? Who are you people? This isn't what I thought it was. Yeah, I know it's been 20 years, but it took me a while to see. It's exactly what it was like. So maybe you got a friend like that who's still, who's sincere, who sincerely believes the cult is what it claims to be. And maybe they are open-minded, and you can tell that by how they interact with you. If they still have a shred of their original open-mindedness left in them, maybe they're the kind you could share this video with and say, hey, what do you think about all these Democrats saying they don't support free speech? Like, this kind of crazy, right? Maybe this is the kind of video you could send them. Of course, if they do watch it, they'll get to this point and be like, hey, she told you to send that. Randy for $10. Randy Wallen, thank you so much. Says, this has been going on forever. How many knew about FDR's polio? Kerry's been like this since the 60s. Jane Fonda sat on North Vietnamese anti-aircraft guns for photo op. Lots of liberal Americans loved the USSR. I so appreciate your perspective, Randy, because we have such different paths to arrive at this place where we now agree on so much. And I know you in real life, and I know that you were never in the woke cult. And so I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate you filling me in on stuff that I was not aware of. I mean, I knew about Jane Fonda, but in the cult, people just wrote that off. There are some things that they know about in that cult that it's seriously like a fact that they just discard. There's actually a book. I've mentioned this book before. It's by, is it, what's his name? I almost said Vincent Bugliosi, but it's not Vincent Bugliosi. It's called Don't Think of an Elephant, and I'm blanking on the author's name currently, but this is a book. It's very brief read. We should probably do it for book club sometimes. It would be so interesting to read it now. It was written by this linguist on the left to explain to other leftists why Republicans and conservatives disregard facts they don't like and don't live in reality. So it's amazing because it's entirely projection for the most part. But what he's describing is accurate. I would just say that it applies more correctly to the left, not to the right. The left disregards facts they don't like, and he describes it in the book as think of a house. He's like, your belief system is like a house, and it's constructed. You've got a foundation, you've got the walls, you've got the door, everything that goes into building a house, and that's your system of belief, and it is a house. And if somebody gives you a fact that doesn't fit in the house, like a window that won't fit with the dimensions you need for that house of belief, you just toss it. You can't incorporate it into the house because it doesn't work with your foundation or anything else. And I thought the way he illustrated that was really brilliant, and it helped me to understand that phenomenon better. And what's amazing is I left the left, and now I see, oh, it more accurately applies to the left. At least today, it does. It's a great book. Randy Wallen, again, for $5. Thank you, Randy, says, mind-numbed, low-information voters believe the garbage spewed by Kerry et al. They will be the death of our nation by mindlessly supporting tyrants. Yes. It's true. It's true. Well, look, this is my little contribution to pushing against that, and also in some sense, I guess you could say some people have characterized like what I do on Deprogrammed as doing penance for all my time in the woke cult. You could look at it that way. I don't really view it that way, but I do believe that, like, knowing what I know and having been in it for so long and seeing things much more clearly now, I have a responsibility to try and reach other people who are still in that cult, who are the low information, mind numbed, brainwashed people. So that's the whole reason I do Deprogrammed. Everybody has a different role to play. It's sort of like in the church, how you talk about like everyone's a different part of the body of Christ. You don't all have, not every body part has the same function or use, or we don't all have the same skills or talent or experience. And so I think we're all uniquely built to serve in a different way. And there are some people that I've sometimes, like on Twitter and stuff, I'll encounter people who are like, why are you always talking to the left? Or why are you still talking about leaving the woke cult? You've been doing this for a few years. That's because I think that's what I'm supposed to do. And because, like I said, there are still people who can be reached and who are reached all the time. And that's the best way I know of to contribute. I was not a conservative my whole life. I don't have a lot of the knowledge that a longtime conservatives have. You have a different tool, a different role to play. You're a different kind of tool to serve the truth. Do you know what I mean? So, this is what I'm suited for. This is what I know. This is where I came from. So these are the people I'm going to try to talk to. Randy, you're just so generous today. Thank you, Randy, for $5. Says Walter Duranty and the New York Times knew about the horrors of the USSR and lied and won Pulitzers to hide the inhumane evil of the USSR. They were liberal. Yes, this is something. There's so many facts like this from history that in the woke cult you don't know. You're sheltered from stuff like this. This is one of those big puzzle pieces that I got after I left the cult. There were a lot of those puzzle pieces. Like, I had never heard of Thomas Sowell. I had never read any of his works. I didn't know about Walter Duranty at the New York Times and his lies about the Holodomor. I didn't know that we gave him a Pulitzer for lying to the people, that this has been going on for a long time. Like, all these different puzzle pieces that started to fit to help me see, to illuminate and to help me see the big picture and to see more clearly. And that's a big one. If you're on the left and you're watching this, I'm guessing if you're just the average Democrat, you have no idea who Walter Duranty is. You don't know what Randy's talking about. It's okay. These are things that are hidden from you when you're in that bubble. So go look it up. Read about it on your own. You're a liberal, right? Go investigate. Be inquisitive. Be curious. Make up your own mind. Go read about that history. And Randy again for $5 says, I love you. I love what you do. You're a happy warrior. Keep on keeping on. Kerry rules. Thank you for the flattering message on my birthday week. People that do it's birthday week, they try to make birthday week a thing. I know a lot of people online, at least in my current circles, are really annoyed by that. But I don't have a problem with it though. I think it's kind of fun. It's your birthday week, man. This is my birthday year. This is my birthday year. Birthday month. This is every year. It's my birthday year. Yeah. It happens every year, Kerry. Okay. I think I might put a pin in it here. I've been trying to keep them a bit shorter than the full 2 hours, so hopefully people will like that length more and be more inclined to watch or to share with leftists. So there's a lot more I can show you. We've showed the clips before of Kamala saying the same thing. We need to censor Twitter. We need to censor X. Well, you know what? Since we're here, Since we're here, let's put this on the screen before we go. I'm not going to show the same clip that I've showed before where she's talking about this, but I'm going to read you part of this article from Unheard. Kamala Harris could censor Elon Musk's X. A 2019 interview featuring Kamala Harris has recently gone viral on X. This is the one I've shown before. In it, she made the bold assertion that then President Donald Trump, quote, has lost his privileges and his Twitter account should be taken down. She was saying that being able to post on Twitter is a privilege, and which it is, by the way, but that he had somehow done something to revoke that privilege, and that he should be censored. The president, he was president at the time when she said this, that he should be censored. And ultimately, if you've read the Twitter files, you know that they did censor him and that they had internal arguments and fights over it because they were saying, but he hasn't said anything that violates our terms of service. They were arguing this. You should go read the Twitter files, leftists. Go read them. He has lost his privileges and his Twitter account should be taken down, she said. Harris first voiced this stance during a CNN conversation with Jake Tapper and reiterated it in a subsequent appeal. With Harris now running for president in the upcoming November election, questions naturally arise about how her administration might handle free speech. I think we know. I think we know at this point, especially concerning platforms such as X, now owned by Elon Musk. If elected, Harris could spearhead initiatives which severely impact Musk's platform, possibly even leading to a ban or other significant legal actions. There's already some cause for concern. Recent email revelations from Facebook's parent company Meta show that Harris's current deputy campaign manager, Rob Flaherty, at the time White House director of digital strategy in the Biden administration, put pressure on the social media company to remove a Tucker Carlson post related to COVID-19. Yeah, they were censoring. The Biden admin was censoring on Facebook and Twitter. First Amendment violation. Similar emails revealed that other senior Biden staffers leaning on Facebook to remove COVID-19 posts as well as political reporting, including the New York Post October 2020 scoop on Hunter Biden's laptop. The growing trend of government intervention in social media under the guise of combating disinformation. That's what it is. They spread disinformation while saying they battle it. It's like Black Lives Matter fighting to break up the Black nuclear family while saying they're fighting for Black people. It's like in woke, like Ibram X. Kendi, the people that call themselves anti-racist, like Robin DiAngelo, Kendi, they call themselves anti-racist while pushing racism. It's psychopathic. The growing trend of government intervention in social media under the guise of combating disinformation is not limited to the United States. Recent events in Brazil serve as a cautionary tale. X has faced increasing pressure from Brazilian authorities for failing to address what they deem to be disinformation, leading to the platform being taken offline temporarily in the country. This drastic measure highlights the precarious position social media companies find themselves in when the government decides to wield their power against perceived threats to their public narrative, to their government narrative, to their partisan narrative, to their elitist narrative. Gotta control the sheep. In Brazil, this clampdown is seen by many as an anti-democratic move. Yeah, because it is. And we just heard John Kerry say it's democracy that's getting in the way. It's an anti-democratic move, with Lula's left-wing government potentially using disinformation claims as a cover to suppress dissenting voices which challenge the ruling party's agenda. Yes, look at that, huh? Liberals, interesting, right? It's a left-wing government doing this over there in Brazil. It's not a bug. It's a feature of the left. Meanwhile, Pavel Durov, the co-founder and CEO of Telegram, was recently arrested at a French airport. His arrest, which has sent shockwaves through the tech community, is similarly based on accusations related to the spread of disinformation via the Telegram platform. The subjective nature of what constitutes disinformation raises significant concerns about the future of free speech, especially as it becomes more entwined with political motivations. Absolutely. Who decides? Who decides what's disinformation? Those of you who watched Game of Thrones, okay, I know a lot of people didn't like the ending, but I loved it. I thought it was accurate. People didn't like that Daenerys, the Queen of Dragons, became this leftist dictator who murdered people and set cities on fire for freedom, for democracy and liberation, right? No, like it. That's exactly what always happens. It doesn't matter if her intention started off as pure. That's what happens. I thought it was a great analogy for leftism that her character did that. And then there was this very pivotal scene. Let me remove this for a second. There was a very pivotal scene, if you remember, Game of Thrones fans. Remember when she was talking to Jon Snow and he was basically like, how could you do this? How could you set all your people on fire? How could you destroy the city? And she said to him, this is how the leftists think. Some of us get to decide. Some of us get to decide what's right and what's not. For everyone else, you and me, we get to decide. Some of us are better. Some of us are elite. That's the way the left thinks. They get to decide what's disinformation. One approved opinion. They get to decide who they kill, who they don't, who they imprison, who they don't. They are the authority. Remember when Fauci said, I am the science? That's the way they think. They're the pigs, like I said, in Orwell's 1984. That's another quick read. Go read that book. A lot of you liberals went out and bought it when Trump became president in 2016, which is hilarious. But you may not have realized, I think there's a good reason why you bought it. It's not the reason you thought. Like maybe you should read the book. I know you bought it and put it on your bookshelf, but you didn't read it. Like, let's just cut to the chase. You should read it. Oh, but Kerry, I read it in high school. Okay. Read it again now. Read it now in this environment. The left is telling you they are the pigs who get to decide the rules for all the farm animals, but they don't have to follow the rules. In Harris's case, her 2019 statements provide a preview of the aggressive stance she might take against platforms such as X if she ascends to the presidency. She might take. I think it's a safe bet she's going to take them. She not only advocated for Trump's removal from Twitter, but she also took the extraordinary step of writing directly to then CEO Jack Dorsey, urging him to suspend Trump's account permanently, silencing political rivals. This is what dictators do. This is what communists do. This is what fascists do, authoritarians do. This is now what liberals do. Her call to action did not go unnoticed. Trump's Twitter account was permanently suspended in January 2021 following the Capitol riots, underlining the potential impact of political pressure on social media platforms. And again, if you haven't read it, you should read the Twitter files and read all the internal arguments that they were having about how to get away with banning him when he had not broken the rules. As the world watches these developments unfold, it's clear that the line between fighting disinformation and suppressing free speech is becoming increasingly blurred. If Harris is elected president, Musk and his platform could face unprecedented challenges, possibly even severe legal repercussions. Yeah, they're going to. The implications for free speech in the digital age are profound. As the definition of disinformation remains dangerously fluid, it's up for our betters to decide, right? Often tailored to serve the interests of those in power. It's a great article. Okay, I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to share something real funny with you. The leftists are really very mad about this. And when I saw this last night on X, I was like, is this real? This is real. This is something Elon Musk is doing. I think it's hilarious. I think his intention is good, but it's also freaking hilarious because he's using money to motivate people. And they are furious. Okay, here we go. Let's see. So Elon Musk has this PAC called America, right? A political action committee. And he just put out this thing, they're pacted, where they said they put out a petition and it says, sign our petition in defense of your constitutional right to freedom of speech and to bear arms. The goal is to get 1 million voters in swing states to sign this petition saying we support the First and Second Amendment, which is so crazy that we're in 2024. It's like, that's even a question, but clearly the Democrats don't support the First or Second Amendment. They don't support the Constitution. So that's where we're at. And so he's saying, his political action committee is saying, for each registered, now here's what he's offering. For each registered swing state voter, you refer them to sign this petition. You get $47. And so all of these people are like, all these leftists are so mad. They're so mad. They're like, oh my gosh, he's basically buying votes. But he's not. He didn't tell you who you have to. He didn't say, "Hey, you get $47 if you vote. If you show that you voted for this XYZ person." He didn't say that. He also isn't. He's not. Look at the fine print of what he's doing. I think it's a hilarious troll. I mean, the best trolls are funny and they're also based in truth. So I think he sincerely wants to rally people around the First and Second Amendment, but he also wants to get out the vote in swing states. And so he's like, you have to be the people you refer, you can refer anyone and everyone in the country can sign this. I signed it. I'm not in a swing state, but you only get $47 for each registered swing state voter who signs it. And so obviously a consequence of that could be, I'm not saying it would be, who knows? People are lazy, but it could be that people register in some of these swing states and he gets some registrations out of it. But he's not saying, show me your voter registration card and I'll give you $47. He's not paying people to register. And they're all upset. They're like, you're paying people to register to vote. You're putting money in politics. And I'm like, money in politics? Money in politics? Do you mean like, I don't know, giving billions of dollars to imported voters? I mean, illegal aliens? Do you mean that? Do you mean bribes? Like Kamala's out here promising people, if you vote for me, I'll forgive your student loans and I'll give you $25,000 of other people's money to put down